So everyone and welcome. Now it's time to go over how good the Sayuki Fumino Fate Wave actually is. So of course the Sayuki Fumino Fate Wave is going to have a Sayuki Fumino in it, amazing shocker. And as it says in her type right there, she's a support type. So let's take a closer look at what she actually has to offer. So just taking a quick look at her stats, we see that it's mostly balanced with a little bit heavier on attack, which is fine. These stats are totally okay, but nothing too amazing in any direction, which is fine because since she's supposed to be a support, I'm going to see later with all of her other abilities that she has, like her Connect and her Magia, that she really is supposed to be a support, and also with her discs. Her stats are fine for just being in a supportive role. And we see on her discs that we have 2 excels and 2 charge discs, which for most characters is pretty bad if they're offensively oriented themselves. However, if this is on a support, it's actually fine to have no blast discs, because if you're using Sayuki, you're going to use her on a team that is trying to use Magia, and if you use her on a Magia team, it's totally fine to be low on blasts, so that is actually fine. It just means that you basically have to use her in a Magia team, because outside of that she's not gonna do a whole lot. Moving on though, past the Spirit Enhancement, we're just gonna ignore that bit. We see her Connect. Her Connect is pretty decent as well, and we see it gives quite a bit of attack up, and it gives Excel MP gain up, which once again clues you in, okay, we're going to do some damage, but more importantly, we're going to increase the Excel MP. There's actually 2 use cases for this. Of course, you can just use this to generate some MP, which you might expect, but on the same Connect you can also use instead to prep up a Magia. So for example, if another character is about to use their Magia, you can give them this Connect, and it gives them an attack cover, which boosts their Magia by quite a lot, because every single damage increasing effect also increases Magia damage. It's just that Magia up only increases Magia. But yeah, so if someone else is using their Magia, you can give them this Connect and increases their attack, which gives them more damage on the Magia. Great. So overall, once again, she's pretty good in a Magia team. Outside of a Magia team, she pretty much only gives the 42% attack up, which, you know, is fine, but nothing amazing. Moving on to her Magia, it's the standard scaling and damage that you would expect from an AoE Magia. I think almost every single AoE Magia in the game is like the 360% damage with the 10% scaling. Now what does it also do? It gives a whole bunch of actually really cool stuff. It gives 5 turns of attack up, which is 20%, and it actually scales by 2.5% per Magia level, meaning that if I'm correct, on Magia 5, this would be a 30% attack up, a 40% defense up, and a 30% status aiming resistance up. Now, as you might already know, these numbers are pretty damn good, especially on something like attack, defense, status aiming resistance. These are like probably the 3 most important passive effects in the game. You want to have as much attack as possible. You want to have as much status aiming resistance up as possible. And if you can get it, you want to have as much defense as possible as well. So getting a bunch of all of this is actually really darn good. And it lasts for a whole whopping 5 turns. That is actually pretty darn amazing. Her double does pretty much the same thing, just a bit more of everything. So if you just want a singular disc to be better, then of course you have the double. Double also of course deals a lot more damage. But apart from that, it's just more of everything, so nothing special there. He's not one of those characters that actually gains cool new stuff for the double. Now, looking at everything, before we make a statement on her entire character, maybe her personal is something for you to keep in mind. So we look at her personal. This is from Dear Friends. It's terrible. It gives regenerate HP for 3 turns, 5%, which is like 15% total, which is not a whole lot. And it removes self debuff. I mean, removing debuffs from self is pretty cool, but using that on an active slot where you can have other stuff instead, maybe stuff that gives you Excel MP gain up, that would be really cool. Maybe you want to have something that gives Magia damage up, or some other effects. Like there's other effects that you would probably want more than a remove debuff. That said, if you're going into a quest where you know there's going to be an important debuff you need to cleanse that isn't a stun, because if you're stunned you can't use this of course, then you might want to use something like this. But then again, but like I said, it's not really something that you would pick in most cases. Most personals are pretty bad in most cases, but have like 1 or 2 cases where they might be pretty good, with the exception of like Yosu's personal, which is probably the best memory in the entire game, when completely broken, but you know, it's just Yosu. So now that we know all of that, let's think about what Sayuki does. So as I already mentioned before, she's basically just there to be really awesome in Magia teams, but outside of Magia teams, she's just decent. So she's not the kind of character that would be my first pick in many situations, mostly because, well, Blast exists, and Blast does over multiple turns just a lot more damage per second, not damage per second, damage per turn than Magia teams do. But if you go into a quest where you have like multiple waves of just small enemies that you can load up some Magia on, she's doing pretty decent as well. However, the thing about supporting in Magia combinations is that if you have a character who themselves doesn't do that much, I mean, she's not bad dealing damage herself, she is more attack focused than defense focused, but it's still not that much. So if you have someone who doesn't super duper excel at attack damage when it comes to dealing Magia damage, usually what is the case is if you were to just swap them out for another character who also deals really high Magia damage, but even more so, for example, Sakurako, who is going to release sometime soon, we don't know when, but sometime soon Sakurako is going to release, and she's going to do way more damage, at least on single target, because she has an absolutely absurd single target Magia. In most cases that will just do you better, because why buff everyone to kill them with Magia if you can just get a Magia that kills your enemy? If you have multiple turns beforehand to stock up on Magia, you can probably go into a boss wave with like 3 or 4 people having Magia, maybe one of them even having Doppel. And I mean, in that case, the quest is sort of just over. Getting a little bit more attack is probably not going to make the difference. But there still are some new cases, there still are some bosses, or maybe some situations where only Fumiko, Sayuki only got her Magia off, and maybe then buffing everyone else can be pretty good. So overall, I'll say she has her pretty good use cases in some quests where buffing Magias can be really awesome and really amazing. The status ailment resistance can do some really wonders in some really tough challenge quests. Put her together with Madokami. If you put her together with Madokami, it could be a support with Madokami, for example, and you get her Magia off, you've got like 60% debuff status ailment resistance for like 5 turns, and then afterwards 30% still, which is pretty darn good and makes a lot of quests where a lot of status ailments happen pretty darn easy. But that said, like I said, in most cases, just outright killing your opponent with Magia is just more effective and also faster, and Auto is going to do a lot better job at that. So yeah, if you really like Sayuki, go for her, but otherwise, she's unlimited. Maybe you can pick her up randomly, she's gonna spook you in some other gacha, and then you can be like, oh yeah, she can support my Magia team, woohoo. But now that I've gone over Sayuki, I'm not going to give her a rating, because actually someone told me, like, can you give like characters ratings like out of 10? How much out of 10? But I'm not going to do that, because like I said, it's most of these characters are situational. In the situation where they're good, they're like a 9 out of 10. In the situation where they're not good, they're like a 3 or 4 out of 10. It doesn't really mean anything, because it all comes down to how you use the characters. Anyway, now that we've talked a lot about the actual character, I mean, this is the important part about this gacha. It's like the one thing that you would roll this gacha for. But if you, for some reason, think to yourself, I'm going to roll a gacha for the Memoria, which you shouldn't, but for some reason you wanted to, let's go over the Memoria that you get. Or if you're already rolling the gacha for Sayuki, maybe you want to know how good the Memoria are. So let's go over the Memoria. As I already mentioned in the video on the news, this Memoria is pretty good. It's an unlimited Memoria that gives attack hub 4, which is 20% if it's maximum broken, and since it's an unlimited Memoria, you're just randomly going to get copies of this in any gacha from now on, including the friend point gacha that you can get a free 10 roll every day for, meaning that you're just over time going to get some of these. If you're really lucky, you might get like a maximum break of this in like half a year or something. And even if you're not, you might get like 2 or 3 copies of this over a few months, which is decent. I know a lot of people who, especially those who have just recently started, maybe in the past few months, or maybe in the past few weeks or whatever, have started playing the game. They kind of need to have just any Memoria that gives them attack up, and just having a 4-star Memoria in the unlimited pool that gives attack up is pretty good. Also, as an added bonus, it gives anti-fog, so if you're going to a quest where fog might be a thing, then yeah, it's good to have in those situations as well. Now, for the most part, it's just really nice to have an unlimited attack of Memoria. Moving on, well, like I said, because it's unlimited, you don't really need to roll this gacha for it. It's going to be in every gacha now. It's just rate up in this gacha, which I think like triples the chance. I don't even know how the chances go for that. Moving on, we also have 2 museums on the weekends, or days off for the art museum, whatever. This is actually quite an okay Memoria for what Sayuki is supposed to do, which is excel MP gain up quite a bit, and also a bit of damage increase for the turn, which is alright. The art is also pretty good. It's basically the ERMAGERD SWERDS Memoria. I actually have something that I compared this to. So it gives you 22.5% excel MP gain up, 20% damage increase up for 1 turn. Wouldn't it be amazing if we had this passively on every single turn? Yeah, this Memoria exists. It's basically the exact same thing, which is, okay, 2% less excel MP gain up. But it works on every single turn because it's passive, and it also features Best Girl. So yeah, this is another Memoria that actually is really awesome, but has one thing about it: it's limited. So if you want to have a Memoria that you can put on Sayuki, and you're going to pull during the Rikaren Christmas gacha, remember that this is a really good Memoria to actually put on Sayuki or anyone else on Sayuki's team, because it's really good. And until then, you might want to use this one specifically for your Axel teams. So yeah, pretty decent overall in general. This all of the stuff in this fate weave are things that are decent in some situations, pretty awesome. This Memoria is overall pretty cool to have in the limited pool, but nothing in here is really so awesome that I would say, oh yeah, definitely pull for this if you want to be strong or whatever. But of course, as always, if you like the character in the Fate Weave, I should probably say this every single video, but I just assumed everyone already knew this, that the balancing in this game works in such a way that you can basically make almost any team work, and in general, you can make any character work, as long as they have like at least 2 or 3 slots. So if you really like a character, even if I were to say you're like, oh, overall they aren't that great, you can still just pull for them if you like them as a character. Like if you really like Sayuki, definitely pull for her. This is like the #1 priority. Like if you think to yourself, should I pull for this gacha? The #1 question that you should ask yourself is, do I really like this character? If you do, then the answer is yes, roll. That's basically it. Although you also need to worry about actually having enough rolls to actually get the character. Like if you have like 10 rolls, maybe you might not be able to get the character, but yeah. That's basically it. So overall, to summarize one last time, overall pretty decent. But if you don't really care too much about Sayuki, probably skip this one and look out for getting this in your future gachas and having a great time. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Hit that subscribe button for more, and I'll see you guys next time.